So last week, we dove into risky business where Tom Cruise showed us what can happen when you're left home alone with too much free time, especially if you're a teenage boy.
Right. I mean, if that were us today and we got the chance to be left home alone, no one would have to worry about any kind of wild parties. We'd probably curl up in our PJs and just binge watch 80 movies all weekend, wouldn't we, sister?
Exactly. Much less calm than trying to pull off any wild parties or business schemes.
Crazy shenanigans.
Shenanigans. It would be all about the R&R and no stress.
Well, speaking of stress, this week's movie really takes the stress factor to a whole new level.
I'm Amanda.
And I'm Missy, and this is Real Sisters Rewind.
Join us as we go back to the 80s. Welcome back to Real Sisters Rewind, Back to the 80s, the podcast where we revisit the classics that made us laugh, cry, and in today's case, completely rethink our home renovation plans. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Missy. And before we dive into today's film, we'd love to ask you to subscribe, leave us a 5-star review. And of course, don't forget, 5-star reviews get you some Real Sisters swag. Just email a screenshot of your review to hello@realsistersrewind.com and we'll get you one of our cool stickers.
That's right. All right, today's movie, The Money Pit, is one that perfectly captures the chaos of life when everything goes wrong, but in the most hilarious way possible. It's a film filled with mishaps, disasters, and plenty of laughs, showing just how unpredictable home ownership can be. And if you all are homeowners, this will resonate with you in some way.
So many ways. So sit back and enjoy as we dive into this classic 80s comedy. Let's take it all the way back to my senior year in high school, y'all, 1986.
So, Missy, our movie this week is The Money Pit, and it was released on March 26, 1986. And since this was the year of your high school graduation, let's have a little trivia fun.
Oh, no. Okay. Okay.
All right. So think back. If this was released, so if it was released in March, it was close to the end of your senior year. So do you remember what the number one song was the week this movie was released in 1986?
Are you like playing the Jeopardy theme song for me? Do I have a time limit? Okay. I think it was that like Amadeus song, like Rock Me Amadeus, Amadeus.
Yes. You Googled that.
I did, I admit it.
I'm like, you would not know that.
No, I
but that was it.
absolutely wouldn't know it. It was it. I didn't love it, but I'm also looking and seeing that it was followed closely by These Dreams by Heart, and I did love that song.
I still love that song. And it's not, when I first saw it, I was thinking it was a different song, but then it's not the one, that other one. It's the one I really love. That's like, these dreams go on. I love that song.
It is a great song.
Okay, so let's do one more.
Okay.
Do you know what the number one TV show was at that time?
I do know that. I'm not Googling it. It is Moonlighting. And the reason I know is because we were researching for an earlier podcast, and I was like, that was my senior year, and that was the number one show, and I actually watched it some.
Oh, that was fun. That was a fun show.
Do you have one more for me? Like,
yes, I have
one more. Ask me something. No, ask me something political.
Okay.
I know the answer. It's the Reagan or the Cold War or Gorbachev. Right? Like, that's got to be the answer to anything political.
Yes, that is fair enough. I was really trying to think about something, and those were the topics my brain went to. So it would definitely anything political during this time would have to included our great late President Ronald Reagan. But I will tell you this, I bet you don't know. If you picked up a People magazine during this time, this is hysterical. You would have seen this headline on the cover. Well, first of all, I have to tell you, I know you all real fans can't see it. I'm going to have to get this image and share it on our Instagram because the cover has these pictures of these beautiful ladies at the time, like Donna Mills, Diane Sawyer, a few other people, just beautiful. And the cover title says, the headline says, "Are these old maids?" And
Shut
it's
up. Shut up. It does
so weird.
not.
Yes. And it says something about them being like 35 and unmarried. Like,
You
I
are
don't know.
kidding me. Oh my
No,
gosh.
it's hysterical and so, so inappropriate.
Oh my gosh. That is so funny.
But
Well,
I'll get that picture out because it's really funny.
whenever I was looking at what was going on at that time, the TV show Perfect Strangers premiered, and it had that character, I think it was Balky. Didn't we talk
Balky.
about him on another podcast?
He was in the Risky Business
Oh, that's right. I
episode.
knew it. I knew we had just
Mhm.
recently talked about him.
Yeah,
Okay.
Balky.
Okay, good. All right. Well, The Money Pit was directed by Richard Benjamin and starred, of course, Tom Hanks and Shelley Long.
It's funny you say that, Missy. I was 10 at the time this came out, and I do remember seeing this movie either on VHS or HBO, probably HBO, to be honest. But if you saw it in the theaters, which, like I said, I did not, a ticket would have cost you about 3.50, maybe $4. What about you?
I did. I saw it in the theater. I loved it. I can remember just laughing and laughing, but I do remember us renting that VHS tape and watching it over and over and over again, as we did so many of our favorites back then. It was one of those that I would get people to sit down and watch if they hadn't seen it. And I would say, like, you have to see this. The screenplay for The Money Pit was written by David Giler, I think is how you pronounce it. Now, this is interesting because he also wrote the screenplay and produced the movies Alien and Tales of the Crypt, which makes sense to me because if you're dealing with home renovations that go like this in this movie, it is like a horror movie.
I agree. And the special effects too that you would have to have in those types of films are kind of similar. But wasn't there a time that you and Chris like really got into Tales of the Crypt?
I think so. Like, I
Like
think when it
right
came
after y'all
out,
got married. I
it
think it
was
was like
kind
when
of
you're on your
like a little,
honeymoon or something.
maybe
Y'all started
so.
watching it.
I
I
don't
just totally,
remember that.
you did. Y'all did. I
Okay,
remember.
we did. I'll ask Chris. Chris will remember.
Yeah, I remember it. Well, I did not realize that this was the first film that Tom Hanks worked with Steven Spielberg on.
Yes.
But as we know, they would become really close friends, and Hanks would work with Spielberg on many of his productions during the following 3 decades. And they made some really incredible magical films together. But it's interesting that this was their first thing they worked on, and Spielberg must have really seen something in him, in Tom, and I agree because he was adorable in this. I forgot how cute he was back then, and he was just so charming.
He was, and I adore him. But I guess in my mind, I was like a teenager at the time, right? And the people that I would have really thought were adorable would have been more like a Tom Cruise, right? Or
Yeah.
so he definitely wasn't in that ballpark at that time to me, but charming is a great word. He's just he's so endearing.
Yeah, it's definitely not like that typical movie star look like you said when you think of a Tom Cruise, but he just, oh, so endearing. You
Yeah.
just are like, I want to know him.
Yeah. You're exactly right. You want to be his friend.
Yeah.
It's also worth mentioning, sister, that The Money Pit, it wasn't a massive box office success, especially when it first came out. But over time, it developed a cult type following. And it's easy to see why. It's relatable. I mean, if you've ever had any home project that went wrong, you can relate. And actually, I just want to stop right here because I've got a couple of stories to share concerning some home issues gone wrong and some that have even caused me trauma. But before I jump in, I swear I've got trauma. But do you have any? Like, is there anything that comes to your mind? You are a part of one of mine.
Yeah, I definitely do. Our home that we live in now has required quite a few projects, and especially after Hurricane Ida. One thing that has been out of all the many, many projects that has been one that just keeps coming back for more. We had a completely new roof put on, which, is quite an expense. And after our roof was put on, we still, during rains, will get these huge downpouring leaks out of nowhere coming down from our ceiling. And we're just like, here we go again. And
You
it
have
just,
not told me this.
oh yeah, and they're in certain spots, and then they'll have the roofers will have to come back out, but it's always something. Just last week, our upstairs air conditioner went out, and we had to get new parts, and it was a whole big hoopla, and it's always something.
It is always
It,
something.
even if it's not a house like this, it's always something.
Yeah. Well, so my two memories are number one, after dad died when we were young, and mom, well, I guess mom and you and me, we renovated the downstairs of the house that we grew up in. And I just can remember we lived upstairs. Like we had a microwave oven up there, and we ate out of the microwave oven, or we brought in takeout, or we went out to eat. And that was so different from our lives
Uh,
because mom had cooked dinner literally every night of
every
our
single
life.
night.
And so there was a little bit of trauma in that. Like, I really do have the feeling now in my life that I never want to live in a house as it's being renovated. I would rather sell it and find something else. I really do. That is.
I was not that young then. Like I was definitely old enough to remember it,
Oh
but
yeah.
I don't remember even have a microwave upstairs.
Totally, totally. We had a microwave upstairs and we would microwave our food. And you loved you some home cooking like butter beans and corn, and that
Yes.
was hard to come by in a microwave, especially at that time. Okay, so here's my other trauma, and it kind of weaves into what you shared about where you guys are right now with your house. Is in our very first home that Chris and I bought back in 1992. It was an older home in the Garden District in Monroe, Louisiana. And it had this room that they had added on. And it was off of our bedroom, and it was just this huge room. And really,
It
we
was
didn't know what to do with it. I mean, it was our first house. We didn't have much
it was like a bonus
furniture.
room or
It was
something that
like
you would
a
think of
bonus
now.
room, yes.
But
But
you had a special name for it.
I did, and it's not one I'll share on this podcast, but I didn't have that special name at the very beginning. At the very beginning, it was just like the extra room or the bonus room, right? But very quickly, we were putting buckets in that room, just like you said, because rain would, it was like a waterfall was coming in that room, and we would have buckets. And so I did name it eventually the S bleep room. And it
Didn't
was the
it?
S
And
room.
didn't it have carpet?
It had carpet in it. We ended up having to rip the carpet off. But let me tell you, my trauma is that we also in that house had some roof leaks in other parts.
Hmm.
And I am fanatical about looking up at my ceiling now. Like, really, like, perhaps I need medication. Like, if it rains, and not too long ago, I looked up at the ceiling and I was like, oh my gosh, there's a leak, and it was just the shadow of the ceiling fan, but I was about to hyperventilate. So, yes, if you've ever had any home issues, this movie may cause trauma. Maybe we should do a trigger warning for anybody who's listening.
That is such a good point. And I know what you mean about the leak marks. I I experience it all the time. I'm like, has that leak mark gotten any bigger? Like they're everywhere. I'm like, you know,
But your
uh,
home is so beautiful. Like, I've never noticed this, but I'm not going to be able to look next time I'm there because it will stress me out too bad.
yeah, you'll see it. Don't worry. Okay, so back to Tom Hanks. This movie came at a crucial point for him because he was moving from being a TV actor in a show called Bosom Buddies that was
I
just,
loved it. I loved
I
Bosom
know,
Buddies.
it was one of my favorites. And he was trying to establish himself as a bankable star after films like Splash and Bachelor Party. And
Loved them both. Loved them both.
me too, but that Bosom Buddies, I loved that show so much.
Okay, Amanda. So I have to ask while we're talking on Tom Hanks, do you have a favorite Tom Hanks movie or a role?
That's really difficult because he is in so many of my favorites and he is, gosh, so talented. My mind goes to though, I do love him in Big. I think that's
Yeah, it's a great one.
the playing the character from being a child's perspective as a grown up, but then also it's just great. And then also Forrest Gump. I love it so much.
Yeah. My mind went to Forrest Gump first as well. Like that was like Forrest Gump. And probably that is it. But my mind then kind of switched over and You've Got Mail with Meg Ryan. Like,
Mm.
and I think the reason I kind of like that, I know it's probably not nearly, the acting stretch that some of his other roles are, but he kind of plays not a villain, but he in the beginning of it, he's like
Yeah, he's
playing
not like the goody
playing the
two shoes
bad
guy.
guy, right? And so we get to see his character evolve, and I could just watch that movie over and over and over again. That final scene when she meets him in the park, and she said, "I had hoped it was you." Like I don't know, I just love that movie
So
so.
it's not Joe versus the volcano.
Oh my gosh, I hated that movie.
I know that's why I said it.
But you know what? There's a cult following around that movie. People
Really?
love Joe versus the volcano. Yes.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so we were talking about Tom. Let's talk about Shelley Long. She was coming off her role as Diane on Cheers. So the pairing of these two, it was a big deal, right? Um, did you ever see Cheers?
Okay, I'm so glad you asked that. So like we established, I was younger, so I didn't watch Cheers like willingly. It was one of those shows that like maybe after the sitcoms were over and it was probably close to my bedtime, Cheers would come on. So I didn't watch the show, but I always saw the opening. And I loved the opening. And I remember being in our old living room with the orange carpet and the brick and the fireplace and the TV and the big, the
The
furniture,
console
the
TV.
console. Yes, thank you, the console TV. And that song coming on. And in the opening, it's like sketches of people from I think I looked this up and it says that it's in the time period like around 1937. So
Okay.
that's like the clothes they're wearing and they're in bars and they're doing their thing. And I remember because of the clothes they are wearing, they look really fancy, but it's really just because of the time period. Um, and I remember I would say to mom and daddy that I wish I lived back then when everybody was rich.
Girl, you loved you some history growing up. That Little House on the Prairie, like you just connected to those time pieces. That
Exactly.
is so funny. Maybe I have thought like maybe I should try Cheers like on like a Netflix rewatch or
People loved
something
it, loved
because
it.
people loved it, but I do remember not liking it at the time.
It may have been a little too mature for you at the
Maybe.
time. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Probably so.
And didn't people used to tell you that you looked like Shelley Long?
Oh my gosh. Yes. And I never liked that. And I never saw it. But I have to say, when I watched this movie, her hair was just like my hair at the time.
Maybe that's what it was, but I kind of can see the resemblance. And I thought she was so pretty. I would think of it as a compliment, but yeah, I could see where you were like, if you didn't think that about her then necessarily.
Yeah. No, I definitely didn't take it as a compliment. And maybe it's because I was like this young high school girl and I saw her as this old woman working in a
Yeah,
bar.
yeah, exactly,
Who
exactly.
knows? All right. So I'll ask you the same thing about Shelley Long as I did Tom Hanks. Do you have a favorite role that she did? Because I do.
Oh, I definitely do.
Okay, what's
Um,
yours?
um, Troop Beverly Hills.
Okay. Mine is the Brady Bunch movies where she plays
Mm.
the Florence Henderson character and she is Mother Brady.
She is perfect.
She is perfect in those films. I love it.
Yeah, I forgot about those. I totally forgot about that. Well, the chemistry between Tom Hanks and Shelley Long was so convincing that a lot of fans thought they were like best friends off camera. But in reality, they had much more of a professional working relationship,
Mm.
and it was all about delivering the comedy gold on screen.
How about that? No, they do seem like they'd be besties.
Hmm.
And I think people do kind of try to work that into real life. I know I do. Not only do I think they're besties, but I think that we would all be besties,
Oh,
like we.
exactly,
Right. You know what I'm
exactly.
talking about.
Yeah, of course.
One of the things I read that I didn't realize is that there had been a delay on the filming of this movie because of Shelley Long's pregnancy. And so after her first and only child, Juliana, was born, she just jumped right in and she did most of her stunts and everything. Like she jumped in full force and she doesn't at all look postpartum like that postpartum
Uh-uh.
look. No, I like
Uh-uh.
after reading that, when I watched it like one more time for our research, I was like, you cannot tell the girl's postpartum.
I would have never guessed that.
No. Okay. Now, Kathleen Turner was considered for that role. And I don't know. I can't really wrap my mind around it because I almost think she'd be too harsh.
I
But
was thinking the same thing.
yes, but at the time, she was in a dispute with 20th Century Fox because she did not want to do Jewel of the Nile, which is about the only thing I've really liked her in.
Was that with Michael Douglas? Am I thinking of something else?
Yes, and it's kind of Indiana Jones-ish.
Jones-ish.
Yes.
Yes. Okay,
But
okay.
but it's cute. But anyway, she tried to use the offer of playing in this movie as a negotiating ploy to like get out of it. And some thought, like I think she kind of got a bad rap because some thought she was really just trying to get paid more.
Interesting. Isn't she also in War of the Roses? Isn't that
Yes,
Kathleen Turner?
it
Okay.
is.
Because I
That's
feel like I get those two this Money Pit and War of the Roses confused in my mind sometimes for some reason. I know it's not the same thing, but it's just
yeah,
odd now that I know that she was thought possibly to be in this film. So I
yeah.
don't know. Interesting. All right, let's get into some of our fascinating facts. The house in the money pit was a real house. It was a massive mansion in Laddingtown, New York. Hope I'm saying that name right. And when the filmmakers found it, it was in good shape. It was for sale by the Riddler family. I'm sorry, no, the Ritter family. And they had to make it look progressively worse as the movie went on.
So I'm guessing they probably like bought it to ultimately wreck it. But Amanda, not that long ago, some people came to you and Eric and asked to use your house to film a Lifetime movie, right? Like, just imagine if they had said, and by the way, we're going to basically demolish it. Like, what would you have done?
For the right price, I would have said, okay, sounds good, because
And now,
they pay pretty well.
and now I'm thinking about your leak. She probably would have been like, "It's yours, it's yours."
Exactly, exactly.
Well, interestingly enough, as we talk about the movie, the runtime is 91 minutes and it's rated PG. And it's actually a remake, Amanda, as my husband has told me many times. And it's a remake of a 1948 film with Cary Grant and Myrna Loy called Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream House.
Chris Washam loves an old movie, and if he had his preference, we would probably be rewatching that movie, and we'd be watching Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream House, not Money Pit.
Yes, you're exactly right. He loves an old movie. As a matter of fact, this wouldn't be Real Sisters Rewind back to the 80s. It would be like Real Sisters Rewinds back to the 40s.
Yes, it would.
But anyway, the point being that the whole like home disaster movie idea wasn't new, but this 80s movie definitely added its own twist.
Yeah. Well, another cool behind the scenes tidbit is Tom Hanks did most of his own stunts in the movie, including the iconic scene where the staircase collapses under him. They filmed that shot multiple times just to get it right. So that means he had to do it over and over, and it seemed really dangerous.
And it seems like that's a new thing, right? Like I also just mentioned that Shelley Long had done her own stunts. We hear about it now, like Tom Cruise doing all the crazy stunts, but I guess it was a thing even in the 80s. But
Hmm.
I will say this, that dang staircase scene where he's like trying to get up there before they all fall, like it made me so nervous.
So nervous. I agree.
I also love the part of the movie that I didn't know, but it was totally unscripted. And you're going to know the part. Spoiler alert before we get into the scene by scene review, but it's where the bathtub crashes through the floor and Tom Hanks just starts laughing hysterically like a sea lion. That reaction was totally real. Can you believe that?
No, that is no, because it doesn't. I mean, that laugh is you saying that makes sense because that laugh is either like that's got to be his real laugh or it was really put on. So I think it's kind of funny and good to know that it was his real, just like reaction
Yeah,
to
and
what
then maybe
happened.
like in that moment, like, man, I can't believe I'm standing here, like
Yeah.
watching this bathtub fall through this mansion.
Well, Missy, it's time to dive into the chaos that is the money pit.
The movie opens with Walter Fielding, played by Tom Hanks, and Anna Crowley, Shelley Long, who are suddenly in a bind. They've been staying in her ex husband's Manhattan apartment. Maestro Max Bissart, played by Alexander Godunov. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. Please forgive me if it's not correct. But he's just returned from a world tour of conducting symphonies.
Yeah, and I could not help but think of the Seinfeld episode where Jerry and Elaine's friend, who is a musical
Me
conductor,
too.
makes them call him Maestro instead of his name. I was like, oh, this is the Maestro.
Yes, yes. And also, I have two things to say here about Goodenough. Number one is he's so believable as a maestro. Like, I was thinking in my mind as I was watching it, like, I could have sworn he really was a classically trained musician. And so I went and I researched it and I was wrong, but he wasn't a classically trained musician. He was a classically trained dancer, Amanda. He went to school with Mikhail Baryshnikov. And I say that because he's obviously fancy, right?
He is fancy
He's
and
fancy.
classically trained
He's
is something.
classically fancy. But
Yeah.
here's the other thing, he died at the age of 45. So he's gone. God rest his soul. He died of hepatitis
Oh,
caused by alcoholism.
oh my gosh. I wonder how old he was in this movie. He was probably an alcoholic
Well,
then.
I'm sure he was because
Oh
I
my
mean, he's kind of
gosh.
wrinkly in this movie. So he wasn't a, a 20 something in the
Oh,
movie.
that's so sad. That's
I know.
crazy.
It is crazy. But anyway, when he gets back, he forces them out of the apartment. They have to find a new place to live. And Walter is a struggling entertainment lawyer. He represents rock bands, and Anna is a classical musician. And so neither one of them are bringing in a lot of money. They live in New York and they're desperate for a new home.
Yeah, it's hard to find a place to live in New York on the fly. So
Right.
they are desperate. And an interesting tidbit is they're not married. She, like you said, the maestro is her ex-husband, and so she and um Tom Hanks are, or Walter, are just boyfriend and girlfriend at this point, which is kind of an interesting little twist to this movie at that time, I think.
Yeah, I think in
Um,
the 80s that might have been a little bit of
there's yeah,
provocative,
yeah. I was like, oh,
maybe
the New
so.
Yorkers, they're so, they're so hip.
Yeah.
Um, well, Walter's real estate connection.
Who is just out of jail, by the way.
Oh yes, yeah. I noticed that. That was funny. Informs him of a seemingly incredible deal, $1 million mansion that's being sold for practically nothing. Though it sounds too good to be true, Walter and Anna decide to visit the property.
I just wanted to scream like, "Hello, did your mama not teach you that if it seems too good to be true, it probably is?"
I know, I know. They just could not see the forest for the
Yeah,
trees.
they were
Well,
wrapped up in it.
when they arrive, the house appears to be a stunning estate. Like they pull up and you're like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. They meet the eccentric owner, Estelle, who is played by Maureen Stapleton, and she is also in Airplane and Cocoon. I don't know if we'll do
Yes, she's a
Cocoon, but
great
we'll
actress.
we'll probably do Airplane
Yeah.
at some point. And she spins a wild story about why she's selling the house so cheaply and rushes them through the process, and I mean rushes. But despite their suspicions, they decide to buy the house.
It
Now,
It might have been, I don't mean to interrupt you, but they
no,
were wooed by the car that she was throwing in,
thank you.
right?
Uh-huh.
She drove them all around the estate in this fancy car. And so she's like, I'm going to throw it in. Now, that fancy car, it's actually a vintage Lincoln, which our mom drove a Lincoln, but a little bit of trivia is that it said that during breaks in the filming, Tom Hanks really was enamored with this car and he liked to drive it around the filming lot.
That's hysterical, and I could totally see that.
Oh yeah.
One other thing I was going to ask you, did you notice how when she took them on the rushed tour that she kept the lights down and it was like kind of dark, so they really couldn't see. Like I remember when they were in her bedroom and it was like candlelight. And so you really
Yes.
couldn't see what was what, but she knew what she was doing. Now, I have to say something here before we continue on. They do this tour, they love it. They're like, "We're going to buy it." My husband is a realtor.
Okay. Of course, I know
And
that, but our
yeah,
listeners don't.
our
Now
listeners
they
don't.
do.
He is a realtor. And we were just rolling over the fact that there was no inspection. Like,
Well,
like
it's
you
because it was
don't,
such a great deal.
like nobody buys a house. I mean, there are instances where you can waive that, but like you got to get an inspection. Another reason, folks, to get a realtor.
That's exactly right. Here's a plug. Reach out to Eric Stevens if you're in New Orleans, Louisiana. One thing that was funny is they didn't have the money. I mean, they didn't have the money to buy this house. So Walter goes to one of his, clients that he's represented, the kid, who I
Yeah.
guess is this multi-bazillionaire. And Walter's, been representing him and brought him in a lot of money. And he's like, I need to borrow $200,000 cash. And the kid's like, no. And then the way Walter got the kid to give him the money is so kid-like because he said, "If you don't," and it's like, "If I don't what?" And he's like, "If you don't give me the money, I won't like you."
And the kid's like, okay, here.
Yeah. All right. So now it's move-in day and we hear sunshine and rainbow type music. And then we see it. The first hint of trouble. He's Tom Hanks's Walter has gone out to his shed. He's gotten some tools. He walks back to the front door and it falls off its hinges, and that sets the tone for what's to come. Then next we see Anna. Decided she's gonna hop in the bathtub, I guess, as they're moving in, which was strange, although I love a bath too. And she turns on the faucet and the pipes spit out this black mud, disgusting stuff. And this just begins a whole series of catastrophic events. And it's clear that the house is a complete disaster.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's not like little things and it gets bigger and bigger. Like the front door falling off is a big deal right off the bat. Like
Sure.
it's
Yeah.
huge things from the beginning. Um, and you get the feeling that they both have that kind of sick to their stomach feeling, that intuition that
Yes.
something is not right here. Like maybe this wasn't a good idea after
What
all.
have we done?
But they're also trying to remain positive for each other because they want to believe that this is going to be good and this is going to be good for their relationship and they're going to make a life here. But from that point on, things just get worse. Walter tries going upstairs because he hears Anna screaming at the top of her lungs because of a raccoon that's jumped out of the dumbwaiter and jumped on her. And I have
My
to say
gosh.
here, this is one of the many, many, many moments that where that slapstick comedy's coming in, and I immediately thought of Christmas Vacation when
Yes, 100% squirrel.
the squirrel jumps out of the
Yes.
tree. It was
Yes.
so I just made that connection and I continue to throughout the movie. So I know we're gonna talk a little bit more about that, but that was one of those moments where
Yes.
I really made that connection. But anyway, he was trying to get up the stairs to her, and as he's going up the staircase, it collapses underneath him and he's left hanging on the edge of that second floor helpless.
Yes, that's the famous scene we talked about earlier. And I will say it again, it stressed me out so bad. Like when he's hanging on by just his fingers, and I promise you, like my palms are sweating right now thinking about it. Like it it just stressed me out.
Well, it's classic and he plays it off so well. He just does such a great job with it. Um,
And can I just say you're right? It's like that slapstick type moment. And someone else, it would have probably been a bit cheesy, but
mhm,
Tom Hanks can pull off anything.
because he's so charming and so
Yeah.
endearing.
Yeah. And I have to say this too, like
Yeah.
that is everything that we've talked about so far, Amanda. And I didn't realize this when I was watching it many times that I've watched it, is that was all just in the first day of the move in, right? Like they're getting ready to go to bed that night and she's sitting in his lap and she's like, he's complaining and she's like, you can't give up. It's only our first day. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so then, like, they've decided they're going to be all happy about it. And so finally they get in their bed, which, by the way, is a mattress on the floor, and a storm comes and rain is pouring into their bedroom.
I know, I know.
Uh,
Well, after that, it is a new day. They wake up, the birds are chirping, and Walter has called in for help. And he's called a plumber and a carpenter. And when Art Shirk, the carpenter, arrives, he's mistaken in thinking that Anna called him for what he refers to as the old nail and hammer.
that
And
was that was so that was so like played into the stereotype of contractors at the time.
at the time, yeah,
And
exactly.
let Amanda and I clear that up. Our daddy was a contractor. He and our uncle owned a construction company, and that stereotype is not always true.
It is not. Absolutely not. Well, although of course she's totally offended, Walter talks her into doing business with him because he's having trouble finding help for the jobs around this house, and he certainly can't do it himself.
Well, it's about this time that we see Anna putting in a turkey and lighting a match to turn on the gas. And we were all nervous watching it, scared it was going to blow up the kitchen. But hooray, it works. It doesn't blow up the house.
It doesn't, but were you thinking? I was thinking, why is she cooking a whole turkey like it's Thanksgiving on the second day of moving into their house?
I had that exact thought. And in my mind, I was like, I guess I never really put two and two together. Like, she's purely cooking a big old turkey. Like, but I was like, well, maybe this was a more rural area and they needed lunch meat. Like, I don't know. I was trying to be, optimistic about it, but why
But
would
it
you
was,
cook a turkey on your day after you move?
yes, a full on Thanksgiving sized turkey.
Yeah. But anyway, it seems like things are working pretty good in the kitchen, except for the plumbing, which they're okay about because they know about that. But he's like, we've got electricity, we've got gas, everything works but the plumbing. And I'm just gonna say for now.
Exactly.
Because the next thing is that Anna needs a bath. I believe that, look, I didn't think about that. That's a way that I really am like Shelley Long's character in
Yeah,
this, is because I love a bath,
that's
right? I
right. Me
feel
too.
her pain. We
Mhm.
both love our baths. We get that from our mom. But she's stressed. She wants her bath. And so Walter has to boil the water for her to take the bath. And so while he's in the kitchen boiling the water, he sits down to wait for the water to boil. And we see a series of, the only way I can explain it is, those I think it's called Rube Goldberg type of reactions, like the toys that people build, like you start a marble and it goes down and it knocks over dominoes, which knocks over a basket. It's like
I
this
know exactly what you're talking
causes the
about. I
other
did
one.
not know that's what it was called.
Well, that's what it's called when you actually build the mechanism. But to me, this humor did that, right? He turned on the
Uh-huh.
light, then you could see the wire in the wall catching on
Burn,
fire
yeah.
and it burned, and then it went down and it made the blender go off and go everywhere. And then I don't know when they had time to pop popcorn, but there was popcorn in the popcorn popper that it then went to, and popcorn sprayed all over them. And then ultimately it keeps going through the wires. It goes to the oven and it propels Anna's turkey right out of the kitchen, actually into her bathroom.
That was hysterical.
But Walter does arrive in that bathroom with the water, two whole bucketfuls of water. That wouldn't be enough, would it, sister?
Not near enough.
No, but when he pours it in, well, this is that famous scene where the tub crashes through the ceiling and lands on the floor below.
And Walter's reaction is that sea lion laughing that you mentioned
Yes.
earlier, Missy, and it is hysterical. And it is one of the most iconic scenes of the movie. And I have to tell you something that I just had a memory that I have to share with y'all with the pouring the water in. For some reason, the water in my bathroom that I'm in right now, as of late, the water has not been getting hot in the
Oh,
bathtub.
no, no, no.
Don't know why. Not real sure. It'll get hot in the sinks. Sweet Eric Stevens has boiled water for me and like come to add it to the water to
Right.
like,
To the lukewarm to make it hot like we like it.
yes,
How
yes,
precious is that? Y'all got to
I
get a
know.
plumber over there.
Well,
Y'all,
I think we fixed it. We're good. It was the hot water heater. But anyway, we're good
okay,
now.
good.
But he did that for me.
Yeah, you talked about this being an iconic scene. I think it is the scene that everyone remembers from the movie. And I'll tell you another fascinating fact kind of related to this is that on the Universal back tour, when a tour guide makes a joke, I guess it's kind of like a bum bum, but instead of that, they press a button and it's Tom Hanks' sea lion laugh.
Oh my gosh, that's really funny. Well, Missy, despite all that has happened in day two, they are still optimistic. They decide they need more money And so Anna is going to ask Maestro to buy some art. And then the plumbing crew shows up looking like Hell's Angels. I mean, it was a crew.
Uh,
And
do
go
you know
ahead.
why they were real Hell's Angels?
Are you kidding me?
No, really, it was. I read that in some research. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, they come in, these plumbers, and they are destroying, like demolishing even the outside of this house, everything.
And and I have to like I didn't ever notice that before. Like they are the plumbers, but they are demolishing the outside of the house. So it doesn't make any sense. But I will tell you what we see, Amanda, when they are actually just destroying the house and then the scenes there for the rest of the movie. It was actually a replica of the house that we saw in the front of the house, but they recreated it in the backyard. I guess they maybe did it so the neighbors nearby didn't get mad as they were filming, but yeah.
Oh,
So either way you looked at it, if you would have been there on set, it looked like the front of the house.
oh, yeah. So the backyard looked like the front. Um, Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there are several more incredible comedic disaster movie moments, like Walter getting stuck in a hole in the ceiling, which
That
was
one is hysterical.
again, I had Christmas Vacation vibes.
Yes, like when Clark's in the
Uh-huh.
attic. Yes.
Yeah.
I did
Yep.
not. I did about the raccoon, but I did not about that, but now I see it.
Yep. Yep. The chimney collapsing and a chandelier falling to the ground and shattering. So, like I said, there are so many moments that remind us of Christmas Vacation in this movie. Like we just said, where he gets stuck in the hole in the floor. Um,
And we're
so
going to be
it,
doing Christmas Vacation
I know, yes,
very soon.
but there were so many of these moments, and I know we've specifically said two, but there are a lot of others. There's one with an electrical plug that really brought that to mind as well, where Shelley Long does the electrical plug together,
Oh,
like
yeah.
Clark's wife does. Um, but it was so prevalent that I actually like questioned myself for a second. I was like, wait, I've got to go see which one of these films came out first to see like where this originated. And it was actually this one came out first before Christmas Vacation. So I don't know. I just thought that was interesting because
That
there
is
were
very interesting.
so many similarities
Yeah.
there.
And I will tell you, sister, after these first two, maybe it's 3 days now since you listed some more of the shenanigans that happened. The couple doesn't seem nearly quite as optimistic anymore. It's like you can literally feel them like they're throwing in the towel.
Yeah, that frustration level
Yes.
is really at an
And
all-time.
again, if you've ever been there, you get it.
Yeah, and there's little things that have fed into it, like the example of when he fell through the floor. She was waiting on him to pick her up at the train station. Well, of course, back then, as we know, we didn't have cell phones. And even if he would have had a cell phone, he couldn't have likely gotten to it. And so didn't have
No,
anyone
if
to
he had
contact.
had a cell phone, it probably would have been in his hand.
Well, that's true. It probably would have been in his hand. That's true. But, there weren't cell phones. There was no way to contact her. So she was waiting at the train station. So when she got home, she was frustrated because she had been waiting on him and he had been there, all night or whatever. So
Yeah.
there were a lot of things that were playing into that frustration. Um, but they wanted to throw in the towel. They are desperate to get this house fixed. It seems like the crew is moving so slow, as it is with every renovation, right? I
Yes.
mean, oh my gosh. And every time they ask how long this will take, the answer is
Yes, it's
always
always
two
2 weeks. How
weeks.
much longer?
Two
2 weeks. That
weeks.
was so funny.
And I feel like that's true. Like
Yeah.
when we had renovations after the hurricane, and it was always like couple more weeks, couple more weeks.
Yeah, you're
Oh,
right. Well, the stress is mounting, and it's not just the house that's breaking down. Their relationship begins to strain, and Anna's feeling stress and not wanting to go home. She's at a rehearsal, and Walter's out of town, and she's just like, oh, I don't want to go back home. And that puts her in a situation where she accepts an invitation from Maestro. You like how I call him Maestro instead of Max, right? She accepts an invitation from him to go to his house for cocktails and dinner, an opportunity to clean up, and it's inviting. And she agrees, but she declares, but no hanky panky. And when she wakes up the next morning, hung over, Maestro leads her to believe that they had reunited. Yeah.
I look, I have some sympathy for her here. He tempts her with a good hot meal and a bath.
Yes.
What what is she gonna say? No?
I mean, she had a ruined turkey and mud in a bathtub that fell to the floor.
Yeah, she could go get a
Like,
hot
what's a
bath.
girl going to do?
Right. I mean, come on now. Well, this is where the movie reaches its emotional low, and Walter and Anna's relationship seems to be on the verge of collapse because she finally tells him that apparently she slept with Max. Although she doesn't remember any of that. She's just
Right.
going off that assumption. And Walter, of course, even though he said he wasn't going to be mad, he just wanted to know,
Right, because he
was
prompted her with that, right? Like,
yes,
tell me, have you seen Max? What has been going on with
yeah,
Max?
I'm not going to be mad.
did you guys get together?
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, when he learns the truth, he is ticked off, and a screaming match ensues, and they are calling it quits. And it's a pretty big fight.
It is. That's
So
why you thought of War of the
it
Roses.
is, it is. So after months of endless repairs and emotional stress, they decide that the plan is going to be selling the house, splitting the proceeds, and going their separate ways. But you can tell they're still in love.
You can. So eventually the house is fully restored and it looks stunning. And in typical 80s rom com fashion, the foreman comes in and he's going to give them a talk and give them some advice. But before I tell you about the wise words he shared with them, Amanda, I got to pause because I'd been watching this movie and seeing the foreman in scenes, and I was like, who is this guy? So I pulled out my handy dandy, the old IMDb app, and Amanda, he was Kimmy's dad on my best friend's wedding.
Yes, that's where I've seen him.
Yes, and ironically, his name on that movie was Walter. It was Walter Wallace, and he was the tycoon. He owned something kind of like a Fox Communications company. But anyway,
He's like typecast as a Walter.
yes, he is. No, the Walter on this movie is Tom
Oh
Hanks.
yeah, you're right. That's not the same Walter. You're right. I just was hearing Walter. Okay, you're right.
But
That's true.
anyway, back to his little inspirational talk. He told the couple that the renovation wasn't easy, but the foundation was good. And that's what's important. And of course, you get the feeling that he's talking about more than the house, right? He's giving them the idea that there's a chance for them too if their foundation is strong. And sure enough, after a heart to heart conversation, Walter admits that he still loves Anna, despite everything, even despite her time with Max. But he also discovers that she never actually reunited with Max because Max had told Anna that that never happened. And this clears up all the tension between them. And they're going to get married in front of their newly repaired house to really signify their new relationship. They are getting married.
Oh, and it's so sweet. They kiss and make up. Then we see flash to the wedding in front of the house with the maestro conducting the orchestra.
Yes.
Hysterical. You've got the rock band, one of the rock bands that Walter represents, and the Hells Angels construction crew, all there as guests, watching and supporting the couple as they get married on their new beautiful estate. But before the credits roll, we do get one last laugh as we see Estelle, the lady, remember from the beginning, that owned the house.
Yeah,
She and her
she's a con
husband.
artist is what she
Uh-huh.
is.
Yep, she and her husband Carlos have now revealed, it's now been revealed to us that they're, like you said, con artists, and they're in Brazil, and they've set up a similar scam with another rundown house, suggesting that this nightmare might happen all over again, but repeating itself elsewhere.
Somewhere else. Like maybe they travel the world and do this, right? And
Yeah.
I have to tell you, sister, I never see an ending like that where I don't think they are setting us up for a sequel. But
Yep.
no, it's never happened. It's never happened. We've never
No.
had a Money Pit, the sequel.
No.
Okay, sister, what are your thoughts? Does it measure up to movies today?
For me, it felt like it did. I had a lot of great laughs. I really appreciated the simplicity of the story. It was kind of tied up with a bow, which made it really sweet. The slapstick comedy was, I don't typically love slapstick comedy
Agreed. Yes.
in general, but if the right people are doing it and can pull it off, like Christmas Vacation, and if the story is good to back it, I do enjoy it. And there were definitely parts in this that I really did laugh because of the actors' reactions and their chemistry together and the whole situation. So I loved it. I mean, I really thought it was so sweet in the end how it ended and that they ended up together, and it was not just the house, like there was more to it.
Yeah, it
So I
definitely
loved
went
it.
deeper. I liked it too. I can remember when I would watch it over and over and over and over again in the 80s. It was almost like every time I watched it, I laughed more and I loved it more. And ironically, I felt that way this time. Like the first time I watched it as we were getting ready for the podcast, I was like, oh, I thought it was better than this, right? Like, I was like, I really loved this when I was young. But by the time I had watched it a second and third time, kind of in prep for sharing, I had connected with the characters again. I was laughing and I really appreciated it. And I agree with you. Like, I appreciated that the actors, the way they approached the slapstick comedy made it easy to enjoy rather than being annoyed by it. Because I can be
Yeah.
annoyed by slapstick comedy
Yeah, me too.
sometimes. It was really
Yeah.
good. All
Yeah.
right. So if you can use a good laugh and want to escape with some just really clean, old fashioned fun, 80s style, The Money Pit is a great rewatch for you. Tom Hanks and Shelley Long both have incredible comedic timing, and you're going to have fun laughing along with them. And so we recommend, don't we, sister, revisiting the movie.
Yes, and I will just say if you don't remember Money Pit or you didn't see Money Pit, but you know yourself like, oh, I love like Christmas Vacation, for example, I think is a great parallel. Definitely give it a watch because I think you'll enjoy it.
Agreed.
All right, as we close the door on the Money Pit, we're heading into a whole new story. Here are some clues to get you thinking about what's next.
Okay, the first clue. We're bringing y'all down south with us where boots aren't just for show, and the local hangout in this movie is more than just a bar.
Clue 2. It's all about balancing tough times at work and at home and with the allure of wild nights out.
A lot of wild nights out. And the third clue, let's just say the characters in this movie might not be looking for love in the right places.
Then do you think they're looking for love in all the
Sister,
wrong?
you're giving it away.
You think you got it? Well,
They probably got it.
we'll reveal the answer in next week's episode. Make sure you tune in.
And don't forget, before you go, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave us a review wherever you're listening to your podcast: Apple, Spotify, Audible, iHeartRadio, or our YouTube channel. It's totally free, and it helps us make sure our podcast stays on solid ground, unlike that poor house in the money pit.
And I want to add as a reminder, not only does it help us get the word out, it also gives us the opportunity to send you our swag, like Missy said earlier, so we can get you out one of our Real Sisters Rewind stickers.
All right. Bye, y'all.
Bye. Love you.